Let's begin with the very latest on the Senate relief package right now. MSNBC's Garrett Haake joins us now from Capitol Hill. Garrett, there have been a number of things in the last couple of days that have raised some flags. This one is with Republican senators, something they're saying is a drafting error. What are they talking about?
Ali, this is an enormously complicated bill with a lot of money in play, and so Republicans and Democrats alike are going over it with a fine-tooth comb. And in their review this morning, some Republican senators found what they think is either a drafting error or a case in which the language of the bill doesn't do what they thought it was going to do as relates to the bonuses in unemployment insurance. The idea here is for folks not just to get what they might get normally from unemployment insurance, but to get additional monies on top of that. Well, these Republican senators discovered that in some of their states, based on the way that unemployment insurance is calculated there, that additional money on top could make it so that people would make more money from collecting unemployment than they would have from the jobs they had beforehand. Here's how Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse explained his opposition to this element of the plan a few minutes ago.
When you look at the interaction between some of the different components of the bills, it looks like other parts of this bill would actually incentivize the severing of the employee-employer relationship. And that's what we aim to stop, and that's why we're working with the Finance Committee staff right now to draft an amendment that would solve this problem so that you wouldn't incentivize the severing of the employee-employer relationship by having the unemployment insurance provisions in this actually lead to different outcomes than would happen if people wanted to try to maintain their current employer.
Now, that's sort of a broad stroke language way to look at this. Another way to look at it is that this bill is being held up so that people who make the least amount of money of anyone in this country might not make a tiny bit more. Democrats are furious about this delay. Republicans are going to say whether they're going to get they're trying to decide whether they want to do this as an amendment, whether they think they can fix this language, or whether they think this is actually the hill they want to die on, to borrow the phrase here, in terms of fighting this thing out to the end, given the enormous pressure around the country to get this relief bill passed today. You saw it in the markets. They're expecting it, and I think a lot of people at home in a lot of places are expecting some help from the federal government soon.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.